My daughter sent me an empty box as a joke on Mother's Day. I never thought I would write those words. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I'd tell. And if you, for a second, feel like this sounds familiar, I just ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening myself. My name is Carol Martinez. I'm 72 years old, and I live in a small apartment in Astoria, Queens. Every morning, at 6 o'clock sharp, I brew coffee with a stick of cinnamon, just like my grandmother from North Carolina taught me. The aroma fills the tiny kitchen where there's barely room for 2 chairs and a table I inherited from my parents. My hands, wrinkled but steady, hold the ceramic mug as I watch from the window as the food truck vendors set up their gyro and hot dog stands. It was Mother's Day, the second Sunday in May. I was wearing my embroidered blouse, the blue one with yellow flowers that my late husband Robert gave me 15 years ago. I had gotten up early to get ready, with the foolish hope that my daughter Amanda would visit, or at least call. I had ironed my gray skirt, put on the pearl earrings that belonged to my mother, and had even applied a little of the coral lipstick I saved for special occasions. Since 8 in the morning, I'd been checking my phone every 5 minutes. The hours dripped by like thick honey. I could hear the children playing in the building's courtyard, their laughter mixing with the sounds of the city, the rumble of the subway, the distant wail of a siren, the call of a street vendor selling Italian ices. Life was going on as normal for everyone else, but not for me. Sitting on the green velvet sofa, worn but clean, with my hands clasped in my lap. At 2 in the afternoon, when I had lost all hope, the doorbell rang. My heart leaped like a little girl's. It was Mr. Henderson, our mail carrier, an older man who always greeted me with respect. "Mrs. Martinez, a package for you," he said with a smile, handing me a medium-sized cardboard box wrapped in brown paper. My hands trembled when I saw Amanda's handwriting on the label. My daughter, my only daughter, had remembered me. I closed the door and walked slowly to the table, feeling my pulse quicken. I imagined it could be a knitted scarf, a bottle of perfume, maybe a photograph of my grandchildren whom I barely see twice a year, or a letter telling me how much she loved me. Carefully, as if it were a fragile treasure, I removed the tape. I lifted the cardboard lid, and my world collapsed. The box was completely empty. There was just a crumpled piece of paper at the bottom, written in Amanda's hurried script. "Happy Mother's Day, Mom. This is how empty your life is now. Hope you finally get that you have no place in ours. Amanda." I felt the blood freeze in my veins. The paper slipped from my hands and fluttered to the floor. My throat tightened as if I were being strangled. A silent scream rose in my chest, so loud I thought the neighbors would hear. But no sound escaped my lips. I collapsed into the chair, staring at that empty box as if it were my own coffin. Tears began to stream down my cheeks uncontrollably, soaking the embroidered blouse I had put on with such care that morning. Each yellow flower now seemed to mock my naivete. How was this possible? Amanda, my little girl, the baby I held for entire nights when she had colic, the child to whom I read fairy tales until my voice gave out, the teenager for whom I worked double shifts at the garment factory to pay for her private university, the woman for whom I sold my mother's jewelry to give her the down payment for her condo on the Upper East Side. I remembered her tiny hands clutching my finger when she was a baby. I remembered how she would run to me screaming, "Mommy, Mommy," when I came home from work. I remembered the night she graduated from law school and hugged me, saying, "I owe it all to you, Mom. You're the strongest woman I know." When had that girl turned into someone capable of such cruelty? I picked up the paper from the floor and read it again, hoping I had misunderstood, hoping it was a cruel joke that would be resolved with a phone call. But every word was clear. This is how empty your life is now. My empty life. Was that what my daughter had concluded after all my sacrifices? After I had given her everything I had and everything I didn't? The apartment suddenly felt smaller, quieter. The ticking of the wall clock became deafening. Outside, life went on. Vendors calling out, children playing, mothers being celebrated by their families. But I was there, alone, with an empty box in my hands, and my heart shattered into pieces. That night, I couldn't eat a single bite. I sat in the dark, watching the lights in the other apartments turn on and off, imagining families eating dinner together, children hugging their mothers, grandchildren running to their grandmothers. And I, Carol Martinez, who had given my entire life to see my daughter smile, was left with empty hands and a broken soul, wondering if my life was truly worth no more than an empty cardboard box. The next day, I woke up with swollen eyes and an aching soul. I stayed in bed, staring at the peeling paint on the ceiling, replaying every sacrifice I had made for Amanda since she was born. It was as if my mind wanted to torture me, showing an endless film of all the moments I gave my all for her. I remembered when she was 8 and got pneumonia. It was 3 weeks without sleep, watching over her day and night at Elmhurst Hospital. Robert was driving a taxi and could barely visit in the evenings. I stayed in that blue plastic chair, watching her struggle to breathe, praying to God not to take her from me. I sold my wedding ring to pay for the medications that insurance didn't cover. I never told anyone, not even Robert. When she got to high school, she wanted to go to Sterling Academy, an incredibly expensive private school on the Upper East Side. Mom, all my friends are going there. If I go to a public school, I won't get into a good university. She would plead every night with tears in her eyes. I was working from 6 in the morning to 8 at night at Mr. Jenkins's garment factory, sewing pants for pennies apiece. My fingers bled from the needles. My back ached so much I couldn't sleep well. But I got a second job cleaning offices at night. I would get home at 11, with my hands cracked from cleaning chemicals, and still stay up helping her with her math and chemistry homework. Thanks, Mommy. You're the best mom in the world, she'd say as I checked her algebra problems, even as my eyes were closing from exhaustion. For 3 years I lived like that, sleeping 4 hours a night, eating mostly bread and butter to save every last penny for tuition. Robert would tell me, Carol, you're going to make yourself sick. Let her go to public school like we did. But I couldn't deny my girl anything. She was my only child, my treasure, my reason for being. When she graduated high school with honors, I cried with happiness at the ceremony. I wore my only good dress, the black one I had bought for my mother's funeral, because I didn't have money for another. Amanda looked beautiful in her white cap and gown. When she received her diploma, she looked for me in the crowd and gave me a smile that lit up my heart. I did it, Mommy. I did it thanks to you. But when it was time to choose a university, she wanted to study law at NYU, the most expensive school in the city. Tuition was $40,000 a semester. Robert and I together made $25,000 a year. It was mathematically impossible. Mom, if I don't go there, my future will be ruined. No one hires lawyers from second-rate universities, she told me one afternoon, sitting on the green sofa where just yesterday I had opened her cruel gift. Her eyes were red from crying, her hands shaking. All the important families send their kids there. I need those connections. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, doing calculations in an old notebook. If I sold my mother's jewelry, the gold earrings I'd inherited, the pearl necklace she'd given me on my wedding day, I could pay for the first semester. If we took out a second mortgage on the apartment, we could cover 2 more years. If I got a third job, Robert found me there at 5 in the morning, surrounded by papers and numbers. Carol, this is madness. We're going to ruin ourselves. She's our daughter, Robert. She's our future. If she succeeds, so do we. The next day, I went to a pawn shop on Canal Street. The woman who helped me weighed my mother's jewelry with indifference. I can give you $1,500 for the lot. They were pieces my mother had saved her whole life, heirlooms from my great-grandmother in North Carolina. Each one had a story, a memory, a blessing. But I signed the papers without hesitation. It was 5 years like that. 5 years working like a dog, selling even the living room furniture to pay for her law books, her suits for internships, her networking trips to Chicago and D.C. My hands became skin and bones, my hair filled with gray. I developed gastritis from eating poorly and slept on the floor because I sold my mattress to pay for the intensive English course she needed to compete internationally. Robert's heart gave out from all the stress and work. The doctor said he needed to rest, but he kept driving his cab 12 hours a day because we knew that without his income, we couldn't support Amanda's expenses. One night, after a minor heart attack, he told me, Carol, I feel like I'm killing myself for a daughter who talks to us less every day, who looks down on us more and more. I put my hand over his mouth. Don't say that. It's the stress of her studies. You'll see. When she graduates, it will all be worth it. But deep down, a small voice in my head was starting to whisper doubts I didn't dare listen to. Amanda no longer had Sunday dinner with me. Her university friends were the children of doctors, CEOs, politicians. When she brought them home, I saw how they looked at our small apartment, our humble furniture, my mended clothes. Mom? Could you maybe not come out when my friends are here? It's just, well, you know, she said one afternoon, not looking me in the eye. I felt something break inside me, but I smiled and said, "Of course, sweetie. Whatever you need." On her graduation day, I wore the same old black dress. I didn't have another. Amanda looked radiant in her red velvet academic hood, her tassel golden. She had landed a job at one of the most prestigious law firms in Midtown. She earned more in a month than Robert and I did in 6. But when the ceremony ended, she went off to celebrate with her university friends. She didn't even invite us to dinner. "It's just going to be classmates and their families. You don't know anyone," she explained as she got into a classmate's BMW. Robert and I took the subway back to Queens, carrying the bouquet of flowers we had bought for her, which she never received. On the ride, he took my hand and said, "Carol, I think we lost our daughter somewhere along the way." That night, alone in the kitchen, I started to cry as I washed the 2 plates from our frugal dinner. It was all worth it, I told myself over and over. My daughter was a lawyer, she had a bright future, she had escaped poverty. But why did I feel like I had lost something irreplaceable in the process? Why did Amanda no longer call me Mommy with affection, but Mom with annoyance? Why did she avoid visiting? Why, when she talked about her job, her trips, her new life, did she never mention everything we had sacrificed for her to get there? The little voice in my head was getting louder every day. "She's using you, Carol. To her, you're not her mother anymore. You're an uncomfortable reminder of where she came from." The following months were a silent parade of small humiliations that cut me like tiny razor blades. Amanda had gotten a condo on the Upper East Side with her boyfriend, Edward, a lawyer and son of textile magnates. She no longer lived with me, but her scorn arrived by phone like daggers from a distance. My 70th birthday fell on a gray Tuesday in November. I woke up early, combed my hair carefully, and put on my prettiest embroidered blouse, hoping she would at least call. I made her favorite dish since she was a child, a slow-cooked pot roast, just in case she came to visit. The aroma of herbs and roasted meat filled the apartment, mingling with a hope I didn't dare confess even to myself. The hours passed. 6 in the morning, 7, 8. At 10, the phone rang, and my heart leaped. It was Mrs. Helen, my next-door neighbor. "Carol, did your daughter wish you a happy birthday yet? It's today, right?" "Not yet, but she's probably busy with work," I lied, feeling my voice catch. At 11 at night, after I had put the pot roast in the fridge and blown out the small candles I had lit just in case, I decided to call her. She answered on the 5th ring. "What is it, Mom?" "I'm at a work dinner." "Honey, it's my birthday today." Silence on the other end of the line. I heard laughter in the background, music, clinking glasses. "Oh, right. Happy birthday. Listen, I can't talk right now. I have important clients here. I'll call you tomorrow." She hung up. She never called back. That was the first birthday in 70 years I spent completely alone. I sat in the kitchen, looking at the pot roast no one would eat, feeling something inside me dying very slowly. But the worst was yet to come. In December, I got a bad flu that turned into bronchitis. I had a 104-degree fever and couldn't even get out of bed. Mr. Henderson, the mail carrier, got worried because I hadn't collected my mail in 3 days and knocked on my door. "Mrs. Martinez, are you okay? You look very sick." With what little strength I had, I asked him to please call Amanda. I gave him her number and explained she was my daughter. "Tell her mother is very sick, that I need her to come." Mr. Henderson returned half an hour later with a pained look on his face. "Mrs. Martinez, your daughter says she can't come because she has a very important dinner with some Japanese investors. She said you should drink some chamomile tea and go to the doctor if it gets worse." Chamomile tea. That was her prescription for my illness. Not a visit, not a call longer than 30 seconds. Not even a, "How are you feeling, Mom?" Just chamomile tea. "Mister, Henderson stayed with me that afternoon, made me some chicken soup he bought from Rose's diner down the street, and brought me medicine from the pharmacy. A stranger took better care of me than my own daughter. It was 5 days of delirious fever. In my nightmares, I saw little Amanda running towards me with open arms, shouting, "Mommy, Mommy!" But when I tried to hug her, she would turn into the cold woman she was now, push me away and say, "Don't touch me with your dirty hands, Mom." When I could finally get up, I decided to do something I had never done before. I went to her office in Midtown without telling her. I wanted to see her, to talk to her, to understand what had happened to my little girl. The building was impressive, all glass and steel, with security guards and receptionists who looked like models. I felt so small there, in my old dress and worn-out shoes, waiting on a white leather sofa that cost more than my entire apartment. After an hour, Amanda came down. When she saw me, her face changed completely. It wasn't happiness, it was shame. Shame of me. "Mom, what are you doing here? I told you not to come to my work unannounced. Honey, I was very sick. I wanted to see you, I wanted to—" "Oh, Mom, always exaggerating. You're standing right here. Obviously you're fine now." She grabbed my arm forcefully, almost dragging me towards the exit. "My bosses could see you. Do you realize how awkward this is?" At the building's entrance, she said in a low but venomous voice, "Mom, you have to understand that I'm not that poor girl from Queens anymore. I have an image to maintain, important clients to impress. You can't come here dressed like that, talking like that. It's embarrassing." It felt like she had slapped me. My own daughter, the girl for whom I sold my mother's jewelry, was telling me I was embarrassing. "Embarrassing?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Amanda, I'm your mother." "Yes, but that doesn't mean you have to remind me of it all the time in front of people who matter." That night, back in my apartment, I sat in front of the vanity mirror that had belonged to my mother. The woman staring back at me had completely gray hair, deep wrinkles around her eyes, and hands gnarled from years of hard work. Was this the embarrassing woman Amanda was talking about? But it wasn't until January that I discovered the deepest betrayal. One day, looking for a cousin's phone number, I found among my old papers a text message chain that Amanda had printed out by mistake and left at my house months ago. It was a chat with her university friends. The words I read shattered my soul. "Amanda, guys, my mom is stressing me out. She doesn't get that I'm not the same person anymore. Sophia. What happened now? Amanda. She showed up at my office dressed like she came from a thrift store with her thick Queen's accent. I almost died of embarrassment. My bosses asked who she was. Paula. Lol, what did you tell them? Amanda. That she was the cleaning lady asking to be paid. Luckily they bought it, but I can't take it anymore. Every time I see her, she reminds me of where I come from, and it just depresses me. Sophia. But Amanda. You wouldn't have gone to school without her. Amanda. Yeah, but I've paid that debt. Now I need to focus on my future, not my past. Edward says I have to cut the emotional ties that are holding me back. My mom represents everything I want to forget. Paula. That's harsh, but you're right. Sometimes you have to leave family behind to grow. Amanda. Exactly. My mom has served her purpose. Now she's just emotional baggage holding me back from being who I really am. My hands shook so much the paper fell to the floor. The cleaning lady served her purpose. Emotional baggage. I just sat there, on my kitchen floor, reading those words over and over again, words that turned me into nothing, less than nothing. That night, I cried like I hadn't even when Robert died. It was a cry that came from the depths of my soul, a silent scream that no one could hear. My daughter, my reason for living, didn't just despise me. She had decided I was an obstacle to her happiness. I got up and went to the mirror again. This time, I didn't see the embarrassing woman Amanda saw. I saw Carol Martinez, the woman who had sacrificed her entire life for love. The woman who deserved respect, not humiliation. For the first time in my life, a terrible and liberating thought crossed my mind. What if I stop giving? What if, for once in my life, I say no? For 2 weeks after reading that conversation, I couldn't eat or sleep properly. I woke up every morning with a knot in my stomach, repeating Amanda's words in my head. My mom has served her purpose. As if I were an old appliance that had stopped working. It was then that I made the hardest decision of my life. I called Amanda on a Friday afternoon, when I knew she'd be leaving her office. "What is it now, Mom?" she answered with that tone of annoyance I knew so well. "Amanda, I need to talk to you. It's important." "Oh, Mom, it's Friday. Edward and I have plans. Can't it wait until Monday?" "No, honey, it can't wait." Something in my voice must have sounded different, because for the first time in months, she agreed to see me. "But make it quick, okay? We have a reservation at Per Se at 9, Per Se, a restaurant where one dinner cost what I spent on groceries for 2 whole months." Amanda arrived at 7, dressed like a magazine executive in a gray pantsuit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. She wore heels that clicked against my linoleum floor, as if each step were a declaration of superiority. She sat on the edge of the green sofa, as if not wanting to get it dirty, glancing at her Rolex every 30 seconds. "Okay, Mom. What's so urgent?" I took out the printed conversation and put it in front of her. Her eyes widened as she recognized her own words. "Where did you get this?" she asked, but her tone was no longer annoyed. It was pure panic. "You left it here months ago. I found it by accident." She was quiet for a few seconds that felt like an eternity. Then, instead of apologizing, instead of showing shame or remorse, she attacked me with a coldness that chilled my blood. "And what did you expect, Mom? That I would keep pretending to love you for the rest of my life? I'm a grown woman. I have my own life now. I can't carry the emotional weight of making you feel important forever." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "Amanda, I'm your mother. I gave you my whole life." "Yes, you did. And I paid you back by studying, graduating, getting out of poverty. Wasn't that the plan? For me to be someone in life? Well, I am. Mission accomplished." Her words were like bullets. Each one hit its mark, shattering the little pieces of hope still left in my heart. "But honey, a mother isn't something you just get rid of when she's no longer useful." "Oh, Mom, enough with the drama." She stood up from the sofa, pacing my living room like a caged animal. "You know what your problem is? You never understood that I grew up, that I'm not your baby who needs you for everything anymore. I have my career, my fiancé, my future plans. And frankly, you don't fit into that equation." "I don't fit?" I repeated, feeling the words get stuck in my throat. "No, Mom, you don't. Every time I see you, I'm reminded of poverty, the smell of cheap soap, of worn-out shoes, of the shame I felt as a child when my classmates came over. Edward says that to be successful, you have to leave behind everything that limits you, and you limit me." In that moment, I felt something I had never experienced before, a rage so deep it scared me. I stood up from the sofa, planted myself in front of her, and for the first time in my life, I spoke to my daughter with firmness. "Amanda, I think it's time for you to leave my house." She laughed. She laughed as if I had told a joke. "Seriously, Mom, you're kicking me out? How dramatic. As if this little rent-controlled apartment is some palace you can banish me from." "Yes, I'm asking you to leave, and not to come back until you remember that I am your mother and I deserve respect." For the first time since she arrived, Amanda looked at me with something resembling surprise, as if she couldn't believe that I, Carol Martinez, the woman who had never denied her anything, was setting a boundary. "You know what? Fine. It's not like I had anything else to do here anyway." She grabbed her Louis Vuitton bag and walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned and said the cruelest words anyone had ever said to me. "Mom, I hope you enjoy your loneliness. After all, it's the only thing you have now. I don't need you for anything anymore." The door slammed shut with a thud that echoed through the apartment. I stood there, trembling, not knowing if I had done the right thing or made the biggest mistake of my life. The following days were the quietest I had ever known. She didn't call, didn't text, didn't even contact me to insult me. It was as if she had decided I no longer existed. But then came Matthew, my 8-year-old grandson, Amanda's younger son. On a Saturday morning, there was a knock at the door. It was Edward, my daughter's fiancé, holding Matthew's hand. "Mrs. Martinez, Amanda asked me to bring the boy. She says she needs time to think, and that you've always watched him on weekends." Matthew let go of Edward's hand and ran to me. Grandma Carol, it's so good to see you. Mom says you're mad at her. I hugged him so tightly I could barely let him breathe. This child, with his big eyes and sincere smile, was the only pure thing left of my relationship with Amanda. I'm not mad at you, my love. I could never be mad at you. Edward stood in the doorway, watching the interaction with an uncomfortable smile. I'll pick him up Sunday night, he said. Amanda is very stressed with work. When he left, Matthew and I were alone. I made his favorite grilled cheese sandwiches while he told me about school, his friends, his video games. It was like having a little piece of light in the middle of so much darkness. Grandma, why doesn't Mom come to see you anymore? He asked suddenly, with the brutal honesty that children have. Sometimes grown-ups get angry with each other, sweetie, but that doesn't mean we stop loving each other. But you've always loved me, right, Grandma? Always, Matthew. Always. That night, after putting him to bed, I lay awake thinking, Amanda was using me again, but in a different way now. She no longer needed me for money or sacrifices. She needed me as a free babysitter so she could live her life without the inconvenience of being a mother on weekends. On Sunday night, when Edward returned for Matthew, I told him something that surprised even myself. Tell Amanda that the next time she wants to leave the boy, she has to come and ask me herself. Edward frowned. Is there a problem, Mrs. Martinez? Yes, there is a problem. The problem is that my daughter thinks she can treat me like garbage and at the same time expect me to be available whenever she needs me. That's over. When they left, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee and, for the first time in weeks, I felt something like peace. I had set my first real boundary, and although I was scared of what might happen, I also felt a strange sense of power. For the first time in 72 years, Carol Martinez had said no and made herself respected. 3 weeks passed with no news from Amanda. 3 weeks of silence that terrified me at first, but gradually turned into something strange. Tranquility. For the first time in years, my phone didn't ring with demands disguised as emergencies. There were no 6 a.m. calls asking me to watch Matthew because something urgent came up at work. There were no text messages demanding I transfer her money because she forgot to pay something important. There were no surprise visits where she made me feel like a servant in my own home. It was as if I had been living in a constant storm, and suddenly, the calm had arrived. One March morning, while sipping my coffee at the kitchen table, I realized something extraordinary. It was the first time in decades that I didn't have to do anything for anyone but myself. I didn't have to plan my day around Amanda's needs. I didn't have to save every penny for her whims. I didn't have to pretend to be happy when I felt devastated inside. That morning, I decided to do something I hadn't done in 25 years. Go for a walk in my neighborhood with no rush, no destination, just for the pleasure of walking. Astoria looked different when I wasn't looking at it through the filter of constant worry. The cherry trees were blossoming, painting the streets pink. The vendors on the corner greeted me with more warmth than I remembered. Mrs. Helen, my neighbor, was watering her geraniums in the courtyard. Good morning, Carol. You look very peaceful today. Good morning, Helen. Yes, I think I'm starting to feel better. I'm so glad. Ever since Robert passed, I'd seen you so weighed down. Sometimes our children give us more headaches than joys, don't they? Her words surprised me. Was my suffering so obvious that even the neighbors noticed? I kept walking until I reached the local market. I hadn't been in months because Amanda always criticized me for shopping there. Mom, everything is cleaner and more organized at the supermarket. I don't understand why you like that dingy market. But I loved the hustle and bustle, the colors, the conversations with the merchants who had known me for decades. Carol, long time no see, Lucy shouted from her vegetable stand. How have you been? Good, Lucy. Very good, thank you. You look different. Did you do something with your hair? I touched my hair instinctively. I hadn't done anything special, but maybe not carrying so much emotional weight was showing even on my face. I bought tomatoes, onions, bell peppers, vegetables to cook just for me, without having to think about anyone else's tastes or demands. What a strange and new freedom. On my way home, I stopped at Mr. Miller's stationery store. I had always wanted to buy one of those beautiful notebooks he sold, with colorful covers and thick pages, but I always told myself it was an unnecessary expense. What do you need such an expensive notebook for? Amanda had asked once when I mentioned I liked them. A $5 notepad is enough for you to write your things. But that day, I bought the most beautiful notebook Mr. Miller had. It was navy blue with gold flowers on the cover, with thick paper that made you want to write on it. "This is for you, isn't it, Carol?" Mr. Miller asked with a smile. "Yes, Mr. Miller. It's for me. I'm so glad. A person should treat themselves every now and then." That night, for the first time in my adult life, I made dinner just for myself. I prepared stuffed bell peppers, my favorite dish, which Amanda had always criticized, saying they had too many calories and weren't elegant food. I put on some Frank Sinatra on my old radio, served dinner on my favorite plate, the hand-painted one I had bought on a trip to Asheville years ago, and ate slowly, savoring every bite. I didn't have to listen to complaints about the food. I didn't have to justify my tastes. I didn't have to feel judged for being who I was. After dinner, I opened my new notebook and wrote, "Today was the first day of my new life. I don't know what the road ahead will be like, but I know I will walk it with my head held high." The following days, I established a new routine, made entirely by and for me. I woke up when my body told me to, not when the phone woke me with someone else's emergencies. I had breakfast at the table by the window, watching the sunbeams filter through the plants I had neglected for years while running after Amanda's needs. I started to care for those plants again. I watered them, removed the dry leaves, talked to them like I used to when I was newly married to Robert. It was incredible how they had survived so much neglect. Like me, I suppose. One afternoon, while watering my mint plant, there was a knock at the door. For a second, my heart leaped, thinking it might be Amanda, maybe remorseful, maybe ready to apologize. But it was Rose, the woman who owned the diner on the corner. "Carol, can I ask you a huge favor? My granddaughter is sick and I need to take her to the doctor. Could you watch the diner for me for 2 hours? I'll pay you well." Before, my automatic response would have been, "I can't, Rose. I have to wait in case Amanda needs me." But that day, I said, "Of course, Rose. I'll be right over." They were the most fun 2 hours I had spent in years. I served the customers, dished out meatloaf and mashed potatoes, took payments, and chatted with people from the neighborhood I had known for decades but never really had time to talk to. Mr. Miguel, the man who fixes bikes, told me about his grandson who went to study in Canada. Mrs. Carmen, yes, another Carol, told me about her new catering business. The high school kids made me laugh with their jokes. When Rose returned, she gave me $50 and something more valuable, a smile of genuine gratitude. "Carol, you're an angel. The customers told me you took great care of them. Whenever you want, there's a job for you here." I walked home with that $50 bill in my hand, and a strange feeling in my chest. It wasn't just the money, though it was nice to have earned something with my own effort, for a change. It was the feeling of being useful, valued, appreciated for who I was, not for what I could give. That night, I slept like I hadn't slept in years. No nightmares, no worries, no phone on the nightstand in case Amanda needed me for some nightly emergency. I woke up feeling rested, renewed. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, and for the first time in a long time, the woman staring back didn't look defeated. She looked free. A week later, I made a decision that would have seemed impossible a month before. I went to the bank and opened my own savings account, completely separate from the one I had shared with Robert and which Amanda had access to, for emergencies. The bank teller, a young and kind woman, explained all the details. "Will you be making automatic transfers from your main account?" she asked. "No," I said with a firmness that surprised me. "This account is just for me. No one else has access to it." I deposited the $50 I had earned at Rose's diner. It was a small amount, but it was mine, earned with my work, for my needs, for my wants. I left the bank feeling like I had climbed Mount Everest. For the first time in my adult life, I had something that was completely mine, that no one could touch, that no one could claim as their own. That afternoon, I wrote in my blue notebook, "Today I learned that freedom isn't a gift. It's earned, step by step, decision by decision, boundary by boundary." I didn't know that this newfound strength would soon be put to the test in the most brutal way possible. It was a Thursday afternoon when my new life was interrupted by a call I wasn't expecting. I was watering my plants, humming a song by The Temptations, when the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. Mrs. Carol Martinez? It was a formal, unfamiliar female voice. Yes, this is she. This is Ms. Morales, from the law firm where your daughter Amanda works. She asked me to contact you because she needs to speak with you urgently. It's about a very delicate family matter. My stomach clenched. Had something happened to Matthew? To Edward? What happened? Is my daughter okay? Yes, ma'am, she is fine. But she needs to meet with you tomorrow at 6 p.m. It will be at our offices in Midtown. It is very important that you attend. I hung up the phone with trembling hands. Amanda hadn't even wanted to speak to me directly. She had used an employee to summon me as if it were a business meeting. That night, I couldn't sleep. What could she want after almost 2 months of silence? Had she finally reflected and wanted to apologize? Or was this another humiliation disguised as a family meeting? On Friday, I arrived at the Midtown offices 15 minutes early. The building still seemed intimidating, but this time I didn't feel small. I wore my prettiest embroidered blouse, the blue one with the flowers I loved so much, and my mother's pearl earrings. If I was going to face my daughter, I would do it with the dignity it had cost me so much to reclaim. The receptionist had me wait in the largest conference room on the 23rd floor. It was an impressive place, with enormous windows showing the entire city, a polished wooden table that reflected the ceiling lights, and leather chairs that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. At 6 o'clock sharp, Amanda and Edward entered. Behind them was an older man in an expensive suit with a leather briefcase, who introduced himself as Mr. Hernandez, a senior partner at the firm. Amanda looked impeccable as always, but there was something different in her eyes. It wasn't the usual coldness. It was something worse. It was calculation, premeditation. "Mom, thank you for coming," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We asked you to come because we have a very important proposal for you." She sat on the other side of the table, placing a folder between us like a physical barrier. Edward sat beside her, not even greeting me. Mr. Hernandez remained standing, as if supervising the meeting. "Mom, Edward and I have been thinking a lot about our family situation, and we've come to the conclusion that it's time to formalize some things." She took a document from the folder and slid it towards me. It was several pages of dense legal text that I didn't fully understand, but a few phrases jumped out at me. Renunciation of inheritance rights, cessation of familial responsibilities, no contact agreement. What is this, Amanda? It's an agreement, Mom. Very simple. We commit to depositing $1,000 a month into an account for you, so you can live comfortably for the rest of your life. In return, you officially renounce any claim to my future inheritance, any emotional or familial claims, and you agree to maintain a respectful distance from our lives. I felt as if I had been punched in the gut. Respectful distance? Yes, Mom. No daily calls, no surprise visits, no requests for money or favors. You live your life, we live ours. Everyone's happy. Edward spoke for the first time. "Mrs. Martinez, believe me, this is the best option for everyone. $1,000 a month is more than you currently make. You'll be able to live very well. And Matthew?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Matthew is included in the agreement," Amanda replied without flinching. "Supervised visits once a month for a maximum of 2 hours, in a public place. That way he can maintain contact with his grandmother, but within healthy boundaries." Healthy boundaries. My grandson turned into a monthly medical appointment. Mr. Hernandez cleared his throat. "Mrs. Martinez, it is a very generous agreement. Your daughter wants to ensure your financial well-being, while establishing the emotional boundaries necessary for her own family's development." I stared at the document, reading line by line the proposal to buy my absence from their lives. $1,000 a month in exchange for giving up being a mother, a grandmother, a family. "And if I don't accept?" I asked. Amanda and Edward exchanged a look. She sighed as if she had expected the question. "Mom, if you don't accept, we will simply cut off all communication with you. There will be no money, no visits, no anything. And believe me, legally, you can't force us to maintain a relationship we no longer want. Besides," Edward added, "at your age and with your financial situation, you don't really have many options." There it was. The threat disguised as generosity. The blackmail wrapped in legal paper. I stood up from my chair slowly, took the document and held it in my hands. Amanda watched me expectantly, probably waiting for me to sign immediately, grateful for her generous offer. Instead, I tore the document in half. Then I tore it again and again, until it was just scraps of paper that I let fall onto the polished table. "Amanda," I said, in a voice I didn't recognize as my own, clear and firm, "I am not something that can be bought or sold. I am your mother, not an old piece of furniture you want to get rid of by paying a junk removal service." Her face changed completely. The mask of false courtesy fell away, revealing the cruel woman I had come to know. "Are you crazy? I'm offering you more money than you've seen in your life." "I don't want your money, Amanda. I never did. All I ever wanted was your love, your respect, your gratitude. But you can't buy that, can you?" I walked towards the door, but before leaving, I turned to look at her one last time. "Honey, for 72 years I have lived trying to earn other people's love. My mother's, who never thought I was good enough. Your father's, who always wanted me to be different. And yours, you who decided I was a burden. But you know what, Amanda? I finally understood something. You don't beg for love. You don't buy it. You don't negotiate for it. It's either given freely or it's worth nothing." "Mom, you are making a huge mistake," she shouted, getting up from her chair. "You are nothing without us. You're going to die alone and poor." I stopped at the door and looked at her with a calm that surprised even me. "Amanda, I would rather die alone with my dignity than live surrounded by people who despise me. And as for being poor, honey, you're the poorest of us both. At least I still know what it means to love unconditionally." I walked out of that office with my head held high without looking back. In the elevator, as I descended 23 floors, I didn't feel sadness. I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades. Pride in myself. For the first time in my life, Carol Martinez had not begged, had not yielded, had not accepted crumbs disguised as favors. For the first time in my life, I had made myself respected. I stepped out onto the streets of Midtown with its glass towers and luxury cars, and took a deep breath of the air of freedom. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew I would face it as the strong woman I had always been, but had forgotten I could be. The days following my confrontation with Amanda were strange. I didn't feel the devastation I had expected after definitively cutting ties with my daughter. Instead, I woke up each morning with a feeling I had forgotten existed: hope. For the first time in decades, my days belonged entirely to me. There were no phones ringing with feigned emergencies, no silent guilt gnawing at my stomach, no constant anxiety wondering what I had done wrong this time to deserve my own daughter's contempt. A week after the meeting in Midtown, Rose offered me a full-time job at her diner. "Carol, you have a knack for cooking and the customers love you. What do you say? It's $3,000 a month plus tips." $3,000. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was mine, earned with my own hands, with my effort, with my dignity intact. "I accept, Rose. When do I start?" "Tomorrow, if you like." That night, I sat in my kitchen with my blue notebook and wrote, "Today, my real adult life began. At 72, I am finally free." Working at the diner gave me back something I didn't know I had lost: a sense of community. Every day, the same customers came in: Mr. Miguel from the bike shop, the high school students, the ladies from the market, the taxi drivers stopping for lunch. They all knew me. They all respected me. They all treated me for what I was: a hard-working, honest woman. "Carol, your grilled cheese is better than my late mother's," Mr. Robert, an electrician who came every Tuesday, would tell me. "Carol, can you teach me how to make that beef stew? My wife says hers never comes out the same," Javier, a young newlywed, would ask. Every compliment, every grateful smile, every "thank you, Carol" I received was like a balm on wounds I didn't know were still open. For years, I had sought validation from the one person who cruelly denied it. Now I found it in dozens of people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could give them. A month after I started working, I made a decision that would have seemed impossible before. I enrolled in computer classes at the local community center. "Why do you want to learn that at your age?" Amanda had asked years ago when I mentioned my curiosity about computers. That stuff is for young people. But now there was no one to tell me what I could or couldn't do. The teacher, a 25-year-old woman named Sophia, was patient and kind. Carol, you learn faster than many of my younger students. You have great discipline. In 3 months, I learned how to use Word, Excel, browse the internet, and even use WhatsApp. I discovered a whole world that had been there all along, just waiting for me to give myself permission to explore it. One afternoon, browsing Facebook, yes, I learned to use Facebook too, I found a group called Women Reborn After 60. It was a group of women from all over the country sharing their stories of overcoming adversity, their new projects, their adventures after freeing themselves from toxic relationships. I read story after story of women like me, women who had dedicated their entire lives to others, who had endured years of emotional abuse, who had thought it was too late to change, and who had finally found the courage to build a new life. A woman from Charleston had started a home baking business at 65. One from Arizona had learned to drive at 70 and was now traveling the country alone. One from Ohio had finished the high school degree she had abandoned 50 years earlier. For the first time in my life, I decided to share my story. I wrote a long post detailing everything I had been through, from the sacrifices for Amanda to the moment I tore up that contract at her law firm. The responses were immediate. Hundreds of women wrote me messages of support, admiration, and recognition. You are an inspiration, Carol. That took so much courage. You gave me the strength to make my own decision. A woman from Philadelphia sent me a private message. Carol, I read your story and I cried. I'm going through the same thing with my son. Could you call me? I need to talk to someone who understands. That call turned into many calls. Her name was Eleanor. She was 68. And her son treated her like his personal slave while despising her for never having done anything important with her life. Eleanor, I told her during one of our conversations, you raised 5 children alone after your husband left you. You worked day and night so they could all get an education. How is that not doing something important? Slowly, Eleanor started setting boundaries too. And then she introduced me to Mercedes, another woman from her town in a similar situation. And Mercedes introduced me to Dolores, and Dolores to Patricia. Without realizing it, I had created a support network, a group of women who strengthened each other, who reminded one another of their worth when doubts crept in. 4 months after my confrontation with Amanda, I made the boldest decision of my entire life. I signed up for a group trip to Santa Fe, New Mexico. It was a 5-day tour organized by the community center, designed especially for seniors. A trip? At your age? Amanda would have said. What if you get sick? What if something happens? But Amanda no longer had a say in my decisions. The trip was wonderful. I saw the ancient cliff dwellings, tasted flavors I never knew existed, learned about Native American cultures, bought beautiful crafts, and in the evenings, I sat in the courtyard of the historic hotel where we stayed, talking with my fellow travelers about life, dreams, and future plans. One night, a woman from Michigan named Beatrice told me, Carol, you have a light in your eyes that's a joy to see. It's clear you're a woman who has found her way. On the bus back to New York City, I looked out the window at the passing landscapes of mountains and plains, and I realized something incredible. For the first time in 72 years, I liked my own company. I liked being with myself. I didn't feel that desperate urge to be needed by someone else to feel valuable. When I arrived at my apartment in Astoria, everything looked different. Not because it had physically changed, but because I had changed inside. The same walls, the same furniture, the same plants, but now it all felt like a chosen home, not a prison of loneliness. I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat on my green sofa, which no longer seemed old and worn, but comfortable and familiar, and opened my blue notebook. Dear Diary, I wrote, using those words for the first time. Today, I returned from my first trip as a free woman. Santa Fe was beautiful, but the most beautiful thing was discovering that I can be happy on my own, that I don't need anyone else to love me in order to love myself, that Carol Martinez is enough company for Carol Martinez. I closed the notebook and sat there, feeling a deep sense of peace. Outside, I could hear the familiar sounds of my neighborhood. Children playing, vendors calling out, life going on as normal. But for the first time, I was also a part of that normal life. Not just a spectator waiting for someone else to give my existence meaning. That night, I dreamed I was a butterfly. I had been inside a dark cocoon for so long that I had forgotten I had wings. But now I had spread them, and I was flying free under an infinite sky of possibilities. 8 months have passed since that afternoon in Midtown when I tore up the document that was meant to buy my dignity. 8 months since I decided that Carol Martinez was worth more than $1,000 a month and supervised visits with her own grandson. Today is Saturday, and like every Saturday, I wake up early, not out of obligation, but because I love to watch my Astoria neighborhood come to life. I brew my coffee with a cinnamon stick, but now it's a ritual of pleasure, not survival. I sit by the window, watching Helen water her geraniums as she waves at me. "Good morning, Carol. How are you today?" "Doing great, Helen. Have a blessed day." My voice sounds different now. It has a strength it didn't have before, a joy that doesn't depend on whether or not the phone might ring. At 9, I open the diner with Rose. After 8 months of working together, she says I'm her right-hand woman. "Carol, I don't know how I managed without you. The regulars even ask for your grilled cheese when you're not here. The regular customers have become like a chosen family. Mr. Miguel brings me flowers from his garden every Tuesday. The high school kids ask me for dating advice while they eat their burgers. The ladies from the market invite me to their family parties. Carol," Lucy told me last week, "you radiate a peace that's just a joy to see. What's your secret?" My secret, I told her, is very simple. I learned to love myself as I am, without apologizing for existing. At 3 in the afternoon, when my shift at the diner ends, I go home and open my laptop. Yes, my laptop. I bought it with my own savings 3 months ago, and now I manage the social media for the Women Reborn group. We've grown to over 5,000 members from all over the country. Every day, I receive messages from women telling me how my story inspired them to change theirs. Eleanor from Philadelphia started her own embroidery business. Mercedes began taking dance classes. Patricia divorced the husband who had been abusing her for 20 years. "Carol," a woman from Texas wrote me yesterday, "I read your story, and for the first time in 30 years, I told my children no when they wanted me to sell my house to give them the money. Thank you for teaching me that love can't be bought or sold." These messages fill my heart in a way I never experienced when my entire identity depended on being Amanda's good mother. One afternoon, while I was checking Facebook, a notification appeared that made my blood run cold for a moment. A message from Matthew, my grandson. He had turned 9, and apparently his father had helped him create an account. "Grandma Carol, it's Matthew. I miss you so much. Mom says you're mad at us, but I want to see you. Can we talk?" My first instinct was the old one, to run to him, to accept any condition just so I wouldn't lose my grandson. But this new Carol, the Carol who had learned to value herself, took her time to think. I replied carefully, "My love, I am not mad at you. I could never be mad at you. But sometimes grown-ups have to make difficult decisions to protect their hearts. When you're older, you'll understand better. I love you always, but your mom and I have to solve our problems first." It was the hardest response I have ever written in my life, but it was also the most honest. 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday afternoon, I was closing up the diner when I saw a familiar figure waiting on the sidewalk across the street. It was Amanda, but she looked different. Thinner, smaller, with dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. She approached slowly, as if walking on thin ice. "Mom," she said in a voice I hadn't heard in years. "Can we talk?" I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had been my little girl, who had been my greatest pain and my deepest disappointment, now looked like what she really was. A lost person who had mistaken material success for real happiness. "Talk about what, Amanda?" "About us, about what happened, about how to fix this." There was a part of me, that maternal part that never completely dies, that wanted to hug her and tell her everything was forgiven. But the new Carol, the Carol who had learned that true love includes healthy boundaries, knew that's not how things work. "Amanda, if you want to talk to me, it will be on my terms. In my house, at a time I decide, And it will start with a real apology for all the harm you caused me. Not excuses, not justifications. A real apology. She was quiet for a moment, and I could see the internal battle in her eyes. The arrogant Amanda fighting against a woman who was perhaps, finally, beginning to understand the price of her cruelty. Okay, Mom, whatever you say. Sunday at 4 in the afternoon, at my apartment. When she left, I didn't feel the desperate excitement I would have felt before. I felt something much more mature. Cautious hope. Maybe my daughter had learned something. Maybe not. But it was no longer my responsibility to teach her. It was her responsibility to show me that it was worth trying. On Sunday, she arrived on time, without Edward, without lawyers, without preconditions. She sat on my green sofa with her hands on her knees, like a scolded child. "Mom," she began, her voice trembling. "I've been in a really bad place these past few months. Edward left me. He says I'm a cruel person and that he doesn't want Matthew to grow up seeing that example. I lost several important clients because apparently my reputation for being ruthless spread. And Matthew cries for you every night." She paused, took a deep breath and continued. "But I didn't come here to tell you my problems so you'll feel sorry for me. I came to ask for your forgiveness. Real forgiveness, like you said. I was a horrible daughter to you. After everything you sacrificed for me, I treated you like garbage. I humiliated you. I despised you. I tried to buy you off as if you were an object. And the worst part is that I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew I was hurting you, and I did it anyway." Tears were streaming down her face, but she held my gaze. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I don't expect things to go back to how they were, because honestly, how they were was wrong. I was wrong. I used you. I exploited you. And when I didn't need you anymore, I tried to throw you away. But I want to try to build something new with you. Something based on mutual respect, not on obligation or blackmail." For the first time in 8 months, I recognized my daughter in the woman sitting across from me. "Amanda," I said calmly, "I appreciate your apology, but apologies are just words. Change is proven by actions day after day, over a long time. I know, Mom, and I'm willing to do the work, if you'll give me the chance." I looked at her for a long time. This woman who had been my torment now looked vulnerable, human, real, for the first time in years. "We'll try," I said finally, "but it will be on my terms, at my pace. And the first day you disrespect me again, it's over for good." She nodded, crying. Today, 6 months after that conversation, Amanda comes to see me every Sunday. She brings Matthew, we cook together, we talk about real things, not just her professional successes. She's started therapy. She's changed jobs to one with a better work-life balance. And slowly, very slowly, we are building a new relationship. It's not the same relationship as before. It's better. It's more honest, more balanced, more real. This morning, as I prepared my coffee and looked out the window at another day dawning over my beloved Astoria, I reflected on the journey. Amanda had sent me an empty box to mock my empty life, but she was fundamentally wrong about something. My life was never empty. It was full of love, sacrifice, generosity, and strength. What was empty was my self-esteem. Now, at 73, my life is fuller than ever, full of meaningful work, true friends, personal projects, small adventures that are all my own, inner peace, and yes, a recovered relationship with my daughter, but on my terms. Have you, or someone you know, been through something similar? If this story touched your heart, share it in the comments. And if you liked this video, leave us a like and subscribe to the channel so this message can reach someone who needs to hear it.